Hello, everyone. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the YSEALI webinar on developing future workforce. How is everybody doing? I'm just looking at the chats now, so let me look at who's here tonight. So I'll start saying hi. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Raul. Mabuhay. Teresa, welcome from the Philippines. Luyan Pham, I welcome too. I think you're from Vietnam. I can see the writing there is Vietnamese, so welcome. Angelina Marquez Cabral, if I'm saying that right. Hi, and your name is Angelina. You're from Timor-Leste. Welcome. It's quite late in Timor-Leste. I think it's around 9 o'clock at night. So thanks for joining us tonight. Hi, everybody. Bajula Silva, welcome. You want to learn about strategies on how to change future workforce, then you're in the right place tonight. So welcome. All right. There's a lot of people here tonight, and we're still admitting more people, and it's super great to have you all here tonight, and welcome again to the YSEALI webinar on developing a future workforce. Allow me to quickly introduce myself. My name is Ima, and I am the YSEALI coordinator at the U.S. Mission to ASEAN. We are super excited to have you guys join us tonight on the YSEALI webinar. It's always great to have our YSEALI members join in and take part in our webinar, joining the conversation and asking questions from our speaker. Tonight we have a very special guest, as you already know. His name is Dustin Liu. He is the U.S. Youth Observer to the UN. But I will let him, and also Hannah, our YSEALI alum who will be moderating tonight, I will let them introduce themselves. But yeah, before we start, I already introduced myself, so I also want to introduce my other colleague who's also saying hi to all of you guys on the chat box. So Dien is also working at the U.S. Mission to ASEAN, also assisting with YSEALI. So she is also going to be helping us tonight. So yeah, thank you so much for answering everybody and just saying hi to everyone. So it's great to have you guys here tonight. We are super excited for tonight's event. This is the YSEALI webinar volume 5. So just to remind everyone that this is something that we do each month. We also have other programs and opportunities from YSEALI. So just to let you know that on the 6th of July, we'll have an upcoming webinar, which will focus on how to make remote work. As you all know, you guys have all been working from home, most of you. Maybe for some people it works, for some people not so much. So if you're interested in knowing how to make, teleworking, how to work telework, find out, and we'll give you some tips. We'll be working with an organization called Inside Pact. So they'll be leading the webinar next month. So that's July 6th. So save the date and mark it on your calendar. We'll send it out on the YSEALI mail. So if you're not a member yet, register now. You can register at yseali.state.gov. And also, just to remind everyone, if you want to be part of YSEALI programs, we also offer the YSEALI Academy seminar, which will be on digital transformation. The call for applications are open, so you have until July 15 to apply for the seminar. So I don't want to talk too much because I know you guys are all more excited to hear from Dustin. So I will introduce you guys to our moderator for tonight. So Hannah is actually a YSEALI alum. She took part in the YSEALI Academic Fellowship. I met Hannah back in Malaysia for a workshop on education. So Hannah will be moderating tonight. So just to do a brief introduction about Hannah, Hannah is a certified public accountant, actually by profession, but she gave up her accounting career in 2017 to work as a volunteer. So if you guys are maybe, also doing volunteer work, but you're also working at the same time, you are going to get excited. It's going to be exciting for you to hear from Hannah. So save your questions as well. Later, we'll have a Q&A session. So without further ado, I'd like to call Hannah. Hannah, can you?
Hello. All right. Thank you so much, Ima.
Wait.
All right. Thank you. So hello, everyone, and welcome to our YSEALI webinar with the theme Developing a Future Workforce. So maayong gabi from this corner of the world. Maayong gabi is how we say good evening in our local dialect. And I am just so excited to be with you guys tonight. So warm welcome for those in our Zoom channel and for those who are tuning in via YouTube. So my name is Hannah. I'm a YSEALI 2019 academic fellow on social entrepreneurship and economic development. I'm from the Philippines and I will be your moderator for today. Now, before I introduce you our brilliant speaker, let me just quickly read through our chat box and do a quick shout out to all our youth leaders from across the Southeast Asian region. All right, hang on. So, good evening from our friends from Timor-Leste. We have here from Thailand, Laos. We have here friends from Singapore, and also mabuhay to my kababayans in the Philippines. Magandang gabi, maayong gabi. We also have here friends from Malaysia and Indonesia. So I think it's just pretty amazing that we have here different youth leaders, representatives from different countries across the Southeast Asian region. And that's very, very awesome. Now, before I introduce you, our speaker, because I know that you are all very excited because boy, oh boy, we are in for a treat tonight. So before I do that, just a little housekeeping notes. If you have questions, feel free to write them down in our chat box and we'll cater your questions later. Also, you can share your insights, you can share your reactions, send in those hearts, those emojis. We just want this session to be, chill and engaging and interactive as well. So to start the ball rolling, all right, are we ready? I'm doing a drum roll in my mind. To start the ball rolling, I have to say I'm very privileged to introduce you our speaker, because our speaker for tonight is the 9th U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations, a role where he works to engage young Americans in the work of the UN. Our speaker is very passionate about quality education and its relationship to building the young change makers that we need to achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, right? And aside from these very amazing things that I've just mentioned, I think one important thing to note, and I just found out about this yesterday, because I asked our speaker, what makes your heart sing? And he said that McDonald's chicken McNuggets makes his heart sing. And I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, who doesn't love chicken McNuggets, right? Also, would you believe this is a fun fact? I'm very impressed. Our speaker is also a certified Zumba instructor. And I don't know about you, but that's pretty cool. So I won't take much time. I won't take too long. Everyone, let us give a warm Southeast Asian welcome to the 9th U.S. Youth Observer to the UN, fellow lover of chicken McNuggets, Dustin Liu. Dustin, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Hannah, you are such a tough act to follow, and you have set such a high bar. I'm just going to invite you to stay with me. I was so excited. I could barely sleep last night. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning from New York. Musta kayo, dajahao, salamat malam. It is so exciting to be connected with you all. So humbled and honored to be here. I hope everyone is taking care and staying safe. I'm really excited today to start with a high-level overview of how I've been thinking about the future of work. And before that, I'd love for us to just really use the different functions in our Zoom chat, because as I go through my remarks, I would love folks to do this. Go ahead and just send a smiley face in the chat. Can everyone send a smiley face in the chat if you're here in the Zoom space with us? Any type of smiley face will do. Like, feel free to use some of these. Feel free to get creative. I see some people are getting a little bit creative. Some people are using emojis. As we go through this presentation, please keep the chat alive. I think because folks aren't on video right now, it would be really helpful if folks are sending their comments and sending their reactions to what we are seeing in the chat. Thank you so much. As folks still keep sending those smiley faces in the chat, can we go ahead and just react with a thumbs up? You know, on the bottom bar on Zoom, if you're here in the Zoom space with us, you should have the option to react with a thumbs up. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs going up. Feel free to use those reactions as I go through these remarks. It'll be a good way for me to track and a good opportunity for me to understand where the energy is in the room. Thank you so much for folks who are using different emojis. Really exciting to have that feature. And the last thing that I want to do to set up our time together is do a quick activity called a chat wave. And if you haven't done a chat wave before, no worries. You'll see an open sentence on the screen. I'm going to ask you to please finish each of those open sentences with a short phrase. Don't overthink the answers, 10 seconds each. But the trick is that we are not going to press enter until I say 3, 2, 1, enter. So we'll have a nice wave in the chat just to see how folks are thinking about a particular question. Let's start off with an easy one. I'm calling in from, go ahead and type it in the chat. Don't press enter yet if you're in our Zoom space. Go ahead and press enter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go ahead and press enter. Home, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, just really exciting to see everyone share where they're calling in from. Thank you so much. Keep those coming, keep those coming. Second question that I would love folks to respond to as those come in, we'll give it a little bit of time. My dream job is, go ahead and take a moment, type that in the chat. Don't press enter yet. I see that we still have some folks in the Zoom chat responding to where they're calling from. Go ahead and finish that up. What is your dream job? My dream job is press enter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go ahead and press enter. Diplomat, academic, college professor, lawyer, data scientist. Christine wants to empower people. Jessa wants to be a diplomat. Fina wants to be a teacher. That wants to be a vlogger. I mean, so exciting to see so much diversity in this room and so many different interests emerge. And I think it's important to consider that all of these jobs are in one way, shape, or form impacted by the future of work. Thank you so much for taking some time to do that. Keep those coming in. Would love to see what folks are thinking about. We have a work with Hannah at her organization. Hannah, you just got a little bit of a shout out. The future of work is, I'd love for us to get a sense of how we're thinking about the future of work. Go ahead and take some time. The future of work is, go ahead and type that in. 1, 2, 3 words is enough. Don't worry. It can be super brief. And let's go ahead and press enter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press enter. Flexible, agile, modern, competitive, empowerment, teamwork, inclusive. Keep those coming. How do we think about the future of work? Innovation, virtual, evolving. Thank you so much for these responses. Keep them coming. I see Ian says technology-based. Ellie says progressive. Simao says networking. Mariah says emerging. These are all words that I would use as well. Really exciting just to get a pulse of how folks are thinking about the future of work as we enter this conversation. Keep those coming. Keep those coming. Robot. Or Sarah, I'm going to circle back to that in just a moment. Certainly something that I think about a lot. And I'd love to end with that question, robots, right? One skill humans have that robots don't is. Go ahead and take some time to answer this question, and we'll ask you to press enter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go ahead and press enter. Empathy, emotions, dream, creativity, humanity. I mean, so many similar responses in the chat. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I think it's helpful for us to frame what robot-proof skills are as we enter this conversation of what humans bring to the workforce and what ways in which we can future-proof our own careers. Keep those coming, keep those rolling as I move into a brief overview of what the future of work is to me. And I think it's really helpful for me to draw on these comments as I move into a high-level overview of what we're experiencing right now. I'll start by setting the stage that COVID-19 has created significant changes and an acceleration in both digitalization and innovation. A lot of folks have shared this in the chat, the idea that robots are playing a larger role in our work phase. An acceleration of digital transformation that we're seeing in this moment has certainly allowed for reskilling and training to become a little bit more challenging and complex. And I want to take a step back here for a moment and really define what we mean when we talk about the future of work. What do we mean by the future workforce? And for me, it's really important to start with a conceptual framework. I believe that the future of work is talking about replacing or enhancing human body, human mind, and labor community. And let me go into that one by one, just so we can get a sense of how we can unflatten the narrative and build upon some of the things that are helping us make sense of what we mean when we say future of work. The first place that technology or automation is really creating an influence is replacing or enhancing our bodily labor, right? So replacing manual labor. These are machines. These are physical machines, machinery that are replacing jobs that humans would have done with their bodies prior. We're also replacing the mind, right? This is where we talk about AI. I saw Daravute just put in the chat, human work with AI robots. This is when robots play a role in pattern recognition. Think about recommendation algorithms, our YouTube algorithms. This is when we think about how artificial intelligence is playing a role in computer vision. I think about driverless cars and think about Tesla's innovations, or speech recognition. I think about Alexa or Siri. Go ahead and throw in the chat if you can think of other examples of ways in which technology are playing a role in replacing or enhancing human work. And the last piece, I think, is a little bit harder to describe, but technology and automation and robots in general are replacing community. Platform tech and gig economy is this new age. We think about how things like Fiverr are allowing for task disaggregation. We think about part-time work, flexible work, the gig economy. I think about things like Uber that are changing the nature of work itself, because we need to consider that it's even more than changing the body or the mind that humans used to bring to work. We're also changing the nature of work itself. Platforms like Uber, community platforms, platform tech, and the gig economy in general is creating a shift in the way in which we understand what work is and what work can be. So I start there because I think the future of work is often used as a buzz term, and it's really important as we engage in conversations to say we're actually talking about how automation is making an influence on our ability to leverage human mind, or it's replacing or enhancing different aspects of what humans brought to the workforce. So I'll start there because as we consider the impact of automation, as we consider a lot of those trends, there are new issues that arise. There are jobs that get pushed out based on these automations. And for quite a while now, we have seen headlines really highlight this trend. Automation might end most unskilled jobs in 10 years, automation linked to jobless count, unemployment, youth unemployment, women and minorities most likely to lose jobs based on robot integration. Things will be automated by 2034. I'm sure you folks have seen these headlines as well. And I think it's really important for us to consider that these have real implications for the jobs that are available. In 2018, the World Economic Forum created a job landscape, and this is an opportunity for us to think about how there are emerging roles and there's global change happening in the next few years. I mean, this was a report done in 2018, and we've already seen a lot of these emergent trends take place. And I love that even in these high-level reports, we're using similar words that we surfaced in the chat. We see that there are top 10 emerging jobs, data analysts, AI and machine learning specialists, general operations managers that are changing and that there are declining roles as well. Data entry clerks, accounting, assembly and factory workers, auditors. I mean, it's important for us to consider and notice these trends because they change the way in which we are skilling, upskilling, and aware of the different skills that are available. When we think about the top 15 skills for 2025, I want to lean into this for a moment because what we're seeing is that there's something really important about robot-proof skills. What we just talked about at the beginning of my presentation, what you shared in the chat, empathy, innovation, creativity, are the skills that we need to lean into. We can't just learn didactic information anymore. We need to really reimagine what job training looks like and what the education system can look like. Important for us to understand that the future of work must be met with an educational response. And this is really where my research lives. How do we spark lifelong learning? How do we make sense of professional development? And how can we continue to democratize training, reskilling, and upskilling that we know is so critical in supporting young people in this future of work context? It is so critical for us to understand how we must push for changes in our own education systems and in our own contexts in order to meet these new trends. Alternatives to traditional education are certainly a way in which we can accelerate the way in which we're gaining these skills and interacting in the labor market. This is thinking about MOOCs, online learning, coding boot camps, apprenticeships. These alternatives to traditional education has the opportunity for us to reskill, upskill, and really reimagine what pre-skilling can look like. When we consider alternatives to traditional education, we're also thinking about ways in which we can innovate how we deliver that education. So when we think about automation and technology, we're not just thinking about the implications that it has on the labor market, but the implications that it may bring for the way in which we adjust for those challenges. When I think about education industry partnerships, I think that this is crucial. And I think this addresses some of the questions that I'm already seeing in the chat on how we can work towards an education industry partnership. There are several ways, and I think about 3 different ways that we can consider how education needs to play a closer role with industry. Pre-skilling, there needs to be an alignment with labor market needs and educational offerings. Business as usual cannot go forward. Apprenticeships are a way in which we can fill open jobs and continue job training. And that leads into the second bullet point, upskilling. What would short-term trainings look like? How do we incentivize lifelong learning to continue developing the workforce? And then this last piece is the role of governments to support the reskilling market. It's really important for us to consider how government intervention also plays a role in this. And I think as we consider the need for organizations and institutions to work together, it's an opportunity for us to consider the role of multilateral organizations and policies like the UNGP. We're actually celebrating the anniversary of these guiding principles today. So I want to take a moment to highlight them. I think it's incredibly important to consider that businesses impact human rights wherever and however they operate. And in 2011, the United Nations issued a set of guidelines defining who's responsible for addressing these impacts. And these days, as companies are becoming more and more globalized, that means that their impacts, both positive and negative, are also global. So the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights allows us to create a set of guidelines for states and companies to prevent, address, and remedy human rights abuses that are committed in business operations that may come as a result, of automation. Let me name that I truly consider labor issues a human rights issue. And as we consider changes in the market, worker exploitation, workers getting pushed out, these are fundamentally human rights issues. So I think it was just important to flag that this is something that global multilateral organizations play a role in. Using this guiding framework and based on what we've talked about, we can understand the future of work as a systems issue. And what do I mean by a systems issue? I essentially am saying that it's an incredibly tough issue to crack. There are so many conditions that keep the future of work where it is right now. And I would argue that it's not moving fast enough. And it requires us to pull different levers. It's important for us to look at structural change, advocating for policies and practices in our own organizations and communities. It talks about how we need to reimagine relationships and connections. That's that relational change piece, really readdressing power dynamics that we see in the workplace. And that in and of itself creates a waterfall effect for us to really change our mental models. And for me, this is where young people play a really critical role in pushing the systems change forward. We need to understand what levers we can pull, and we need to be clear about the future of work that we want to embody. And while this is in place, there is so much more work to be done. I know that there is so much that young people can do. I mean, for me, it's asking for change, being really clear about what we need to thrive in the future of work. And in my view and my own posture, I believe that it's being intentional to pursue lifelong learning opportunities that allow us to continue to have labor market flexibility. And as we imagine a future ahead, I ask who else better to write this path than young people who bring energy, innovation, and curiosity to this moment. And someone that I think about who really embodies that is Hannah. So I'm actually going to hand the floor over to Hannah for a bit. Hannah, please take it away. I would love to hear a little bit about how you're thinking about the future of work and any stories that you've come across that really capture some of the themes that we've just talked about.
All right. Thank you so much, Dustin. Well, I was breezing through the chat and our audience are so impressed about your presentation and of course the content. And we already have a lot of questions here, but all right. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share about the work that I do. Can I share about Hectares of Hope? Right. Right. So Hectares of Hope basically is the one I pitched during my academic fellowship in the US in 2019. So we recently launched it in 2018. As well around November. And Hectares of Hope basically is a social enterprise with the goal of holistically transforming marginalized communities, marginalized rural poor communities, and getting these families out of poverty through innovative, sustainable, and scalable solutions. So while Dustin was speaking a while ago, I was thinking of those people who are in poor communities and how it would be not really easy for them to upskill and reskill and level up and progress while the rest of society are progressing. So I can actually talk about Hectares of Hope, my project, on and spend the entire night talking about it, but of course I won't do it. So just allow me to share with you a story about this guy named Pedro. All right, so Pedro grew up in a very dysfunctional family. They were very dirt poor and his parents really weren't able to provide for their wants, more so their needs. They were really, really dirt poor. They just lived in a makeshift shack in a remote rural village. And so at such a young age, Pedro's dream really is for him and his family to get out of poverty and for them to live a comfortable life. But you see, getting out of poverty is not easy, especially when you're there. Because people in my community would say that when you are poor, you only think of one thing, and that is how do you survive for that day. And for Pedro and his family, survival is the most important thing. Food is the most important thing. It's not health, it's not education. So they don't really value education as much in my village. And so at the age of 15, Pedro was thinking that, oh, there's no opportunity for me here in my local village. There is no hope for me here in my community. So I'll just run away. So Pedro ran away. And as it is with most youth from rural areas, Pedro went to the city to seek for better opportunities and to search for a better life. But unfortunately, life in the city wasn't really good for Pedro, because he lacked education, he lacked certain skills. He really wasn't able to compete. And so he was bullied because he was poor and he lacked education. And so he just jumped from one odd job to another, to put food on his stomach. And he was also exploited by his previous bosses. I mean, one time he mentioned that there were several times where his bosses didn't give him his pay. I mean, that's very frustrating, but that's a reality here. And so I was just thinking stories like this one, like Pedro, who was still young, but he couldn't compete because he didn't have the necessary tools and resources. And so at such a point in his life, he felt hopeless, he felt frustrated, he felt so lost, he felt like there was no point in fighting for his dream. So stories like this isn't unusual in the Philippines. I mean, in fact, there are millions of other Pedros out there, wanting to get out of poverty, and yet they don't have the opportunities. They don't have the necessary tools. I mean, no matter how hard they tried, no matter how long they worked, even though they already broke their backs while working, I mean, success just feels so far off for these people because, I mean, let's face it, they are way behind the starting line to begin with. So it's very hard. And so that's what basically birthed Hectares of Hope. this longing to provide opportunities, not charity, provide opportunities to the people from rural communities so they don't have to migrate to the cities. We want to provide opportunities for them in their own land. And so Hectares of Hope was launched, and right now we are working with one upland community of around 25 families. I love this community so much. They're in a remote mountain in my province. And so these people, since their skill set is towards farming, so we train them in organic farming, we teach them new agricultural technologies, and because we are very holistic, and yes, we are a business, but we are looking beyond that. I mean, we want to maximize profits for the ultimate benefit of the community, but we also want the community members to grow in their values, in their skills, to continue to grow as individuals. And we really want to focus on this community first for our pilot project. So we are also closely working with other organizations, since we know that we can only do so much. So we need to really collaborate and, look for organizations that will fill in our gaps, who could help us with the other skills that the community might need. And we also, I would just like to mention that we are working closely with the families, because we believe that when we work with a family, when we build a family, we are building the nation actually. So that's what we are doing right now. And may I just mention, Hectares of Hope, our model is called 135. So it's very concrete. It's like in year one, we pay the farmers, we give them fair wages and government benefits, which is pretty unusual for farmers in my region, because most of them are exploited. I mean, this is a fact known to many. And so in year one, we train them, and then we do mentorship. We teach them financial literacy. We teach them entrepreneurship, sustainability, innovation, because, a lot of these people actually have great ideas. It's just that they don't have the capital to start their business. And so we wanna address that as well. So that's for year one. So 135. In year three, so these farmers already share in the profits of Hectares of Hope. So that's what we really want to do, while still undergoing trainings, because we really want to inculcate in them the importance of continuous learning and development. Because as Dustin has mentioned, there is an ever-changing landscape of work. I've seen a lot of news that has said that millions of jobs will be lost because of automation, and we don't want these people to be left behind. So that's in year three. In year five, our goal really is to exit the area, because by that time, these farmers are already capable of running the business on their own. So they are already owners of that business. So that is our goal. And we really want to replicate this model to other impoverished communities in the region as well. So that's basically what Hectares of Hope is. And we have very lofty vision. We have a very lofty vision, very lofty goals, but we are all in and we are all out, in seeing these things come into fruition. Now, just want to circle back to the life of Pedro. So when he heard about Hectares of Hope coming to his community, he was so excited and he went back. So he went back to his community with the hopes, of joining us. And we recently enrolled him in our program, and we trained him. And because he's so diligent and he's a very hardworking man, he's still around 25. He's very hardworking. And so we gave him bigger platforms where he could grow as a leader. And so would you believe that right now, as we are talking, right now, Pedro is actually one of our managers. He's actually managing one of our production areas. And this task does not only require physical strength, this also requires critical thinking skills, foresight, innovation. And that's why Pedro right now is working closely with our farm manager and our CEO. So we are mentoring him. And so one day he came to us and he asked us, he said, how can one like me become a manager? I'm not even smart. I didn't finish high school. He cannot believe it. He was so shocked, because never in his entire life did he ever imagine that he could land a decent job, more so become a manager. It was so, mind-blowing for him, because he didn't really expect that to happen. But, even within just a few months, Pedro also grew in his ability to lead and in his ability to empathize with others. And right now, I think this is a very good, very major milestone in his life. He is now able to eat 3 times a day with snacks. And that's a very good thing. And we're very happy for that. He's now providing for his family. And I think this story of Pedro really encapsulates what we at Hectares of Hope are really all about. Again, we want to give opportunities, not just charity, for people in impoverished communities. Because I personally believe that when given the necessary tools, when given the necessary mentorship, when given the necessary, hand-holding, we could definitely unleash the incredible potential of impoverished people. And that's very, very exciting for me. And I think at the end of the day, what we really just want to make sure about is that as everyone progresses, with the ever-changing landscape of work, with digitalization, with globalization, and all these things, we just want to make sure that at the end of the day, as everyone progresses, people from poor communities are not being left behind. Just want to make sure that people like Pedro are not left behind. So basically, that's what we're doing right now. We are very busy in the mountains. So I just came here for the Wi-Fi connection. So anyway, that's what Hectares of Hope is. That's what I've been busy about. And thank you so much for the time, for giving me this opportunity to share. And I hope I didn't take up too much time. Yeah, Dustin?
Hannah, I have goosebumps. I am so inspired by all the work that you're leading, and I'm excited to continue being a cheerleader for your work. A few things come to mind for me. One, I just love your leadership posture, thinking about how you're working yourself out of a job, right? This idea of sustainability through the lens of social innovation, I think is just so powerful. And there's something here that I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about, which is the importance of job training to be community driven and the importance of community collaboration, right? And I feel like that comes out of tension with a lot of the policies that we see with job training. So often we see really large scalable policy changes that are affecting millions of people. And what you've really touched on right now in your story is the importance for it to be localized, for it to be really community centered, and the importance for communities and relational supports to rise. How do you manage that tension?
Oh, you're right in saying, Dustin, that we have a lot of policies now, but they don't really trickle down to those in the grassroots, in the low levels of society. That's very sad, but it's the reality now. So as of now, I think since we cannot really do so much about that right now, so what we do is we just have to do what we have to do. I mean, there are organizations on the ground, organizations such as ours, organizations or NGOs, civil society organizations who are really doing an incredible job in, doing an impact or doing lasting transformation in their local areas. I think that's very important while waiting for our policies and systems to change. I mean, I think we don't have the luxury of time to just wait on that. So while we're working on that, we're also working on, our local areas or how we can do our share of making our communities a bit better. Something.
You've drawn a really powerful relationship, Hannah, right now between work, between labor, between livelihood and human dignity and hope, right? These really large things about what it means to be human, really large themes around what it means to thrive. I think you've tied really nicely into what you've shared about your project. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about what it would look like if it wasn't, driven by opportunity. You talked a little bit about how it's not charity, but it's really an opportunity or instilling hope. And I'm curious how you've seen it job training be seen as charity, because I think I've seen a lot of corporations see or view these initiatives as corporate social responsibility when actually there's a business case for it. So Hannah, talk to me a little bit about how you manage those tensions.
Dustin, I should be the one asking you questions, but yes, all right, I'll indulge. So thank you so much. Yeah, you're right. So the context as to why I'm here, why I'm in this space already, is that we used to work in one of our slum communities here in Davao. So before we used to do dole outs, we just give money, give them food, so which isn't really sustainable. So it felt like at the end of a certain season, these people were dependent on us. So we were just thinking, yeah, we have to be sustainable. We have to teach these people, the adage still holds true. If we teach man how to fish, we can feed him for a lifetime. So that's basically what birthed this idea that we have to be sustainable and think about this as a business. So right when you do business, or like when you're an entrepreneur, you are like really bootstrapping, you are on your knees doing the dirty work, and because you love what you do, you don't really let go. So I see helping people like that, like you go there, you do hand-holding, you treat them like your family. So how would you raise your children, right? So you would want to give them the best opportunity. So in the same way, in the communities that we work with, we want to do excellent job training. We want to give them excellent services. We want to empower them. We want to change their mindsets as well. We want to inculcate in them that they are still, free to dream, and we want to put them in a in a place where they are able to take an active role in changing their narratives, in changing the trajectory of their lives through training, mentorship, upskilling, reskilling. So that's what we're trying to do. Because if we just, stay in doing charity, I think it's kind of detrimental in the long run. Because it's, yeah.
Yeah. Keep going. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, that's basically it, Dustin.
I think that you're touching on something that I find so interesting, which is the power that each and every person has to contribute to this process of upskilling and reskilling. A lot of folks were asking in the chat, how do I get involved? How do I really lean into this? And I've seen so many students take what they're learning in the classroom and disseminate it and go back to their own communities. Business students who are helping local entrepreneurs conceive of business plans and financial models. I think about scientists, students who I'm friends with studying science, and really thinking about ways in which they can create new jobs and opportunities with their own education. And I'm curious, Hannah, before we start moving to questions, how do we do this, right? Like what's the process of making sense of taking that first step? I'm curious if you can just share your first step in terms of starting this amazing initiative. What was that first step like?
It was hard, but I think it started with this vision that, since I'm still young and this is what I really want to do, I want to make a dent in the world, and there are people out there who need help, and this is me. I'm free now, I'm able to help, so why not go there? I just took the first step of going there. I gave up my career, went to another city and did the work. I think it's just that, Dustin. The first step is just to do the first step. We just go. Of course, we think, we plan, but we ultimately just go.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Hannah. Truly, our capacity to make change grows.
What about you, Dustin? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about doing the first step? How were you taken from the Dustin who's just a child in Taiwan, from this Dustin now who's the US Youth Observer? How did it happen? And who are the people who influenced you? And I'm really quite curious. Before we go to the question and answer forum, how is
Hannah,
that?
big question. I'll be really brief and say it was really my family. My family immigrated from Taiwan, and they were trying to find opportunities for education in this country, and seeing that challenge really made an impact on the way in which I have been thinking about the future of work and the opportunity to ensure that everyone has the context or the skills or the capacities to thrive. Hannah, I'm so excited to talk to you more about this offline. Let's move to the questions.
All right.
We have a lot of great questions in our document right now. Hannah, you kick us off.
All right. First question. Hang on. All right. So Dustin, are you ready? All right. This is from Audrey Leon from Singapore. She's interested to know how we can develop the top skills you mentioned during your presentation.
It's so interesting. I'll be brief with this one. They happen with practice. Our ability to be creative, our ability to be innovative, our ability to be entrepreneurial happens with experience. And I think it's really important for us to consider that there are very few tests that we can take to build these skills. They happen in practice, and they happen in everyday life, right? When I think about empathy, when I think about active listening, when I think about dialogue skills, those come up for me in my everyday conversations, and I don't read about them in a textbook. They are practiced. And I think that's why it's so important to be engaged in experiential opportunities. I learned so much from my own work doing volunteer work in my own community, learned so much about participating in different community-based organizations. And I think it's important for us to consider and find ways in which we can really tackle those opportunities and leverage the skills that we hope to build in every opportunity that we enter into. Hannah, what about you? How do you learn empathy?
Oh, you just practice it. Oh, wait. Hang
yeah,
on. Do we still have time? I think we're running out of time.
Keep going. Next question.
Thank you. All right. Second question, Christine Lara from the Philippines. You think that the education system was designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore?
Absolutely. Right. I think our education system globally is antiquated. When we consider the fact that the labor market is moving at such a rapid pace, it's important for us to consider that we're moving towards a world that does not yet exist. I often talk about how the future of work is an act of science fiction, because we are truly moving towards a world that does not yet exist, and we need the education system to catch up.
Right.
The education system is a system, and I use that word really intentionally because there are so many things keeping it in place, and it's important for us to understand how we can work outside of the system or with the system to innovate. That's why I'm so excited about alternative forms of education. That's why I'm so excited about MOOCs and online education. The ways in which we're moving and understanding what credentials can look like, what flexible credentials can look like, how job training is not just within higher education institutions is such an exciting opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Dustin. All right. We have here number 7. Okay. Question from Cambodia, from Vute. Dear Dustin, isn't only the education system that could help the future workforce? How about the ability to adapt to the future, especially in the work environment?
That is such a great question, Vute. I think about education not just as formal learning, but informal learning. And I think that's the key strategy that we should be leaning into. When we consider education beyond the classroom, when we consider learning beyond the context of educational institutions, it expands how we think about how we're adapting to the future, especially in the work environment. What does it look like for us to incentivize and put in learning as we are in our jobs, right? What does it look like for a company to take ownership of that and say, we actually are anticipating this trend and we're going to work proactively to reskill or upskill our workers to address this future of work? It's so important that we consider and we think about learning really expansively, even outside of places that we traditionally would have learned.
All right. Thank you, Dustin. All right, another one. Wow, keep them coming. All right, this is from Jezreel. She says, how do we address the digital divide brought by the massive digitalization among marginalized poor communities?
I mean, this is a policy change. I feel like we truly need to move to universal broadband. I think the digital divide is causing real damages and opportunities for young people, for marginalized communities to get the access to the learning that they need in order to upskill, reskill, and meet the needs of this future workforce. It's mission critical. I'm currently one of the Y20 delegates, which is part of the G20 summit. And in those conversations, that's key. We understand that this digital divide can be solved by infrastructure and can be solved by policy. It's something that we really need young people to start advocating for because it's causing an exacerbation of inequities in our education and labor markets.
Wow. Thank you, Dustin. Next. All right. Wait. How can we build a business to help other people get jobs? Any strategies or suggestions? Because here in Timor-Leste, a lot of young people move to England to look for jobs because we have very few job opportunities here.
I mean, what a powerful question. And Hannah, I might pull you in on that as well. Strategies on how we can build businesses to help others get jobs. I think about how, like Hannah, we need to help people, we work ourselves out of a job, right? What does it look like for us to incentivize entrepreneurial spirit or advocate for capital or investments in local communities in order for people to build their own businesses locally? I think a lot about this concept that everyone is on the brink of something awesome, right? Every single person has a business idea and everyone has lived expertise of their own lived experiences. And I think because of that, we need to think really critically on how we don't need to just build businesses, but we need to help individuals find that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that spirit of entrepreneurship doesn't just result in businesses, but it results in the flexibility that we see in our own roles in the labor market. And I see a question from Teresa from the Philippines, and Mariette from Indonesia, right? Curious about your amazing business, right? How do you approach these village communities so they're open to training opportunities? What were some challenges that you faced? Because I think that does tie into the opportunity to build businesses to help others get jobs.
Well, I think for this, empathy really plays a big role. I mean, the first thing we did is we really went to the community, asked them their challenges, asked them what their assets are. Because, as humanitarian workers, we don't go to a community as heroes. We go there as partners. So we in our organization, we went there, we did interviews, we built relationships first. We tried to, let them know that they can trust us, us that we can help them. So that's basically how we did it first. We also collaborated with the local government because we need also protection. But again, just to circle back on what I said, it's empathy. I think that plays a really, really big role in this work, in how we approach our partners in the communities that we work with. It's empathy and love.
Thanks for centering empathy and love. Teresa from the Philippines wanted to ask you about that transition from a corporate job to being a volunteer. Right? How did you cope with that? I mean, I have a question about that too, because I think that's a case study in pivoting.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I mean, I'd love to share about this, because it wasn't really an easy adjustment for me. Because when you're in the Philippines, when you're a certified public accountant, that's a big thing. Asians, our parents really want us to be like here. And then, so in the Philippines, being an accountant is like you're one of the top, people. But then one day I just realized, no, I want to work and help the poor. So I want to do this. And like my family, they were like, you're crazy. I mean, we spent a lot of money on you and you're just helping the poor. But then I was just driven by this vision that I feel like I am called to do this. And I don't want to waste time because my parents were like, just do it later. But then I just realized that, sometimes later becomes too late. And I really want to give my best years to this calling of helping the poor. And so that's what happened. It's a very big adjustment. My bosses were like, you're crazy. Like my colleagues were like, are you kidding me? Like, it's so hard to be an accountant. And then you just like gave it up. But yep, that's how it is. When you really love what you do, you are willing to give up, convenience and comfort. Yeah. Just to mention, I lived from my corporate job, I transferred to a new city. And then because I worked with an organization named Hope for the Nation's Philippines, we lived in a center of the slum community. So there were riots. It was a different environment for me, but that's part of it. That's the beauty of it.
Hannah, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I think maybe we have time for a 30-second question. I would love to share this last one with you. And this is one that I ask a lot of young people, and I'll encourage everyone in our space today to think about, what is the world that you want to live in? What is the world that you want to build towards, Hannah?
Wow. So the world that I really want to build towards, I mean, what I'm envisioning right now is a world where there is no more poor. I mean, a world where we already unleashed the incredible potential of those living in impoverished communities, because there are a lot of geniuses in them. But as you mentioned, Dustin, it's very important to cultivate that entrepreneurial, genius among the poor impoverished communities. And that's what I really envision. I would want to see a world where there's no poor. What about you, Dustin?
In the context of the future workforce, I want to build towards a world and dream of a world where every single person has access to a job that provides them livelihood, to an occupation that gives them joy. And I think nowadays that feels like it's so far away, but I truly believe as we continue to reimagine and push towards changes in our education systems and our own business environments and our own labor market and local communities, there will come a time, and this is something that I believe in a lot in, we have to imagine a future that we hope to build towards before we can actually work towards it. So being able to see a world where every single person has gainful employment, where every single person has opportunities to retraining, upskilling, and reskilling, that's the world that I'm hoping to build towards. And Hannah, I think I'm going to turn it over to you for some closing remarks. What's top of mind for you? What are you walking away with?
Well, I'm just want to echo what you mentioned earlier, Dustin, that we need, as the youth, we need to be clear about the future of work that we want to embody. I think that's very important. And I believe that as the youth, as young people, we are in a very integral part. We have a very critical role to play in changing the systems and in working towards the future that we really want to embody. Dustin, do you have final thoughts you would want to leave our audience with before I turn this over to Ima?
Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. I'm just struck by how our conversation is really tying to the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. I think it's really important for us to consider the role that multilateral organizations have to incentivize states and businesses and corporate bodies to work together in order to protect, respect, and also remedy the human rights violations that are currently occurring in our context. So I just really want to honor that today is an opportunity for us to really center in on those guiding principles because it's the anniversary, and it's an opportunity for me to continue to reimagine the world that we're hoping to build towards. So I appreciate you giving me some space to share that, because I think that's something that I'm leaving with, based on our conversation, the importance of us having those policies and having those frameworks to make sense of our world right now.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much, Dustin. It has been very comprehensive and insightful. I mean, I'm sure our audience took a lot of notes. And at this point, may I turn this over to Ima? Ima?
I didn't want this to end, but thank you so much. Thank you, Dustin and Hannah. And you guys who are watching, you can go to the reaction and send a heart or a thumbs up or a clap. I'm gonna send a clap. Yay, hearts! So many hearts. There's so much love for Hannah and Dustin, and I mean, this was amazing, you guys. We love the vibe. Dustin, I know it's really early for you, and Hannah, it's really late for you in Manila. This was awesome. So yeah, you guys put in some love in the comments section. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mai. Thank you, Nur Fatin. Thanks, Christine. Thank you guys for watching. And we hope you guys really, really learned a lot. And even I did myself from Dustin and Hannah. You guys were really, really just inspiring. Not only did you share about your own personal stories, and I think a lot of people wanted to know, like, personally what you guys thought because of what you guys have experienced yourself. So that was amazing to hear. But yeah, great job, everybody. Dustin and Hannah, thank you. You guys, before we all leave, we'll take a group photo together. So I think right now you can actually now put on your video cameras. So if you want to turn on your camera, Diane from the YSEALI team will help take a photo of all of us with Dustin and Hannah. So you guys can definitely, repost and put this up on your social media. And we're excited for the next webinar. So thank you, Dustin and Hannah. So let's take this group photo. Okay, wait, I can only see. Okay, let me change to gallery view. Okay, Diane, do you want to lead the session?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Oh, so happy to finally be able to see all of your faces. Hi. Hi, Dustin and Hannah. Finally, Dustin and Hannah can see all of your faces. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, so let's take the photo. I have 7 pages here, so appreciate your patience. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, once again, page second. 1, 2, 3. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Page 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm sorry. Page 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So happy to see all of your faces.
Thank you, Diane.
Back to Ima.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you, Hannah and Dustin. Big thank you to you guys. Thanks again, everybody, for watching and joining us at the YSEALI webinar. See you on the July 6th for the next upcoming YSEALI webinar. So save it on your calendar, mark your calendar right now so that you can join us for the next YSEALI webinar. Thank you guys for watching. And if you want to say bye, unmute yourself. I think you can say bye too, I think.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye. Thank you for.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Fatia. Thank you. Thank you, Mai.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Satorlino. Somsanit.
Thank you.
Teresa, thank you for your question.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mai. Thank you,
Yes.
Sanit.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining, Samsania. Thank you. Good evening. Good
Thank
night.
you very much. From now, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adit. Adit, thank you.
Thank you, Adit.
Thank you,
Next.
Satorlino. Where are you from? Okay, do we still have Dustin here?
Don't think so.
Hello. I'm still here. I'm so sorry. Should I leave?
No, it's okay. Oh, well, we're trying to say goodbye to everybody else. Thanks, Mai. Ciao. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Salamat.